What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fantasy Files podcast, where we talk about our favorite fantasy series and topics. We are your co-hosts, Spencer and Gabe, and today we are talking about the first book in the Lightbringer saga by Brent Weeks. Before we do, though, please hit that like and subscribe button down below if you're watching on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at Files Fantasy. Also, thank you to everyone listening on Spotify and Google Podcasts. And also thank you for all the support we've gotten from the last two episodes, interviewing author Holly Tinsley and her audiobook narrator, RJ Bailey. You guys have shared and retweeted the hell out of it, and mentioned it in your blogs and reviews, and we just appreciate that so much. If you haven't yet, definitely go check out H.L. Tinsley's new book, We Men of Ash and Shadow, and check out our review after you do. We absolutely love this book, and it is now officially a finalist in the self-published fantasy blog off, which, if you don't know what that is, it's essentially this year's competition run by author Mark Lawrence for self-published authors to have their books reviewed by well-known bloggers, and be voted on to win. So a big congratulations to Holly Tinsley for making it to the final round of SPIFBO 7. Also, for some reason, Mark Lawrence has blocked us on Twitter.
Oh,
I don't know. I've never talked to him. I've never said anything about his books. I've read one of his books. And so if anybody knows why Mark Lawrence blocked us on Twitter,
that's crazy,
please
dude.
let us know.
That's crazy.
I have no idea why. So yeah, I want to shine the light on a couple other self-published authors as well. So let's talk about some of what we've been reading. Gabe, you were really sick for a week and you weren't able to read too much.
I was. That
have
is
you
true.
you read The Black Prism?
Yep.
Were you able to read anything else?
The Black Prism was the one that I was focused on, I guess, and then I'm continuing the Expanse series. So I started book 3 of the Expanse, and so far I absolutely love it. Other than that, no, like you said, I was really out of it for several days, so I missed my chance to really get down on the reading. It's hard to read when I'm not at work because, obviously working, I can just put headphones in and go. But yeah,
right. How far are you into the third Expanse book?
ooh, probably I think I've got 5 hours left.
Oh, wow.
Pretty far, yeah.
Interesting. So what do you think of it?
I love it.
You really like the third one?
Yes. I love the series. The third one does seem a little kind of, I guess a little slow would be the word, or
right.
It's the action's not as fast paced, right? Until of course you get a little further up, and now it is very fast paced, but
right.
But it's good, man. It's compared to the other ones, I wouldn't even, pull it back a row. I think it's a good book.
Yeah. I just finished the fourth one, and the third was definitely I got to near the end of the third and I was like, oh man, I hope that the first two books weren't just the really good books and the rest of them are kind of like 3, because I really didn't like 3 at all. I didn't like really any of the characters, and that's not entirely fair, I guess, because I think the third one is, for me, is still good because it is the Expanse.
Yeah.
In the same way that we read Full Moon, like the Dresden Files second book.
Yep.
And it's not I don't know about you, but it's not my favorite. But it's still Dresden Files.
Exactly.
It's still if you were stranded on a desert island and you only had Full Moon, you still have Dresden Files. It's still a good time. So that's kind of the way the third book felt to me, is it's more Expanse, but it wasn't what I was hoping for.
For sure.
However, I got into I think it's pronounced Sibylla Burns, and it is the fourth book. And ooh, I think it's my favorite so far.
Oh yeah.
Even more than the first one.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Dude, it is really, really something special. And it follows the same kind of thing as like, you know, you're going into this book and the only character that you're really familiar with is Captain Holden.
Okay. Yep.
And you know, you got all these other new characters and you're kind of like, am I gonna like these other characters? Like, I don't really know, like that, you know, I don't know them that well and they're kind of new. And it's just kind of that feeling of getting thrown into the deep end a little bit.
Yep.
And by even just like an hour or two into the book, I loved every single character. Like
Nice.
every new character that it gave me, I absolutely fell in love with. I wanted more of everybody's chapters. And you know, I wasn't upset when it would go from like a Holden chapter to like a different character's chapter. Like
Yeah.
I really like the Holden chapters, but I was just like, yeah, let's see
Let's
what
just roll with it.
everybody's doing right now.
Yep. See,
And
that's exactly how I felt about this book here. Is it like
oh, nice.
sometimes it'll switch to like Anna, or no, I'm talking about like when it switches and you're like, oh, all right, well, I guess I'm gonna have to sit through this for however long and listen to this person that I don't know.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so I don't know. I can't wait for you to read it because I want to talk to you about it so
Yeah.
bad. The fourth book, there was 2 points so far. I haven't gotten super emotional from a Expanse book yet.
Yep.
Except for when I finally got to the fourth book. There is two things that happen at the end that legitimately made me like tear up. Like
Yeah.
I was like crying a little bit.
For
And I'm
sure.
just like, oh my God, this is such a good book. So I cannot give it high enough praise. Every time I finish a Expanse book and go on to whatever we're reading for the podcast, I'm kind of like, oh man, like I really want to just keep going with Expanse because I read Lightbringer and then I read Sibylla Burns and then I needed to do the reread for this. And the second time through Lightbringer, and I was like, I really just want to keep going with Expanse. Like I almost don't want to read anything else
Yeah,
right now
for
but
sure.
Expanse. And it is one of those things, you know, I feel like it's been a very long time it's been a very long time since I have found a series where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm definitely reading this all the way through.
Yep.
And I think the last one was King's Dark Tidings. I
Yeah.
think when I picked up KDT, I was definitely like, okay, I'm reading this all the way through no matter what. But you know, I've read a lot of really good books this year that I've been really happy with, but none of them they've all been fantastic. But either some of them are the first book in a series, or some of them I was just like, yeah, I'll get to the rest of the series later. Like I'm not too, I don't feel like I need to read it right now. And
Yep.
The Expanse is definitely the first series that I've gotten into in a long time where I've been like, I want to read every single book back to back, like right now.
For sure. For sure.
And so I think that's such a wonderful, rare thing.
Yep.
So I was thinking for this section, we could also kind of talk about like what we've been watching. You've been reading or you've been watching the Expanse show that you've really liked.
Yep.
Right. Have you been impressed visually? Because
Yes, definitely impressed visually. And again, I'm not that super far into it, so I don't want to
yeah,
go off the storyline, but it is, I mean, it's like a modern, you know, like badass sci-fi show.
yeah,
It's pretty cool.
yeah. I just started it as well, and I was blown away by how good the
Yep.
visual stuff is. And I was blown away how good the casting is. Like, I would say maybe like 85 to 90% of the characters are exactly how I pictured them in my
Yeah.
head.
Yeah, for sure.
Holden is very, very similar to how I pictured him in my head. Naomi is very, very similar. Amos is
Yep.
very similar to how I pictured him in my head for sure. The only ones that I didn't picture the way they look is Miller. I pictured Miller more as Woody Harrelson, the
Oh,
actor,
okay. Yeah. I could
because
see that.
the guy who does the audiobook sounds just like him.
Yeah.
And so I always picture Woody Harrelson for Miller. But then Alex, I was not picturing Alex like that at all.
Yeah.
And so that was the other one that I thought was kind of an interesting casting choice. But yeah, I'm really liking that show as well. I think you're really gonna like the next couple episodes that you come across, and it just it just takes off with that first book, and it is surprisingly it stays very faithful to the truth to the book.
Nice.
And even to the point where like specific quote, like specific like
Yep.
things they said in that scene in the book are
Are the
said in the
same. Yeah.
show. And I'm like, I
That's the way
really
it should
like
be
that.
done, man. I like it when they follow so closely because a lot of times the show is lacking quite a bit, you know,
Yeah,
of what the book gave to you. So that is good.
for sure. Um, you and your girlfriend also started Sex Education, which is one
Yes.
of my favorite shows of all time.
Yep.
I I've been wanting to talk to you about this so much. How do you feel about this show? Like
We
what?
love it, man. We
Yeah.
absolutely love it. It's such a cool I'll be honest, it wasn't what I was expecting. So it's a
Yeah.
British show, right? So it's
Yeah.
over there, but it's cool. You know, it follows these younger like 15, 16-year-old people just trying to like kind of figure their way into this whole world of I guess being sexual, I guess. But then there's a
Yeah.
lot more to it than that, but that's kind of
Yeah.
the baseline. It's but it's really good. We've really enjoyed it. We watched an episode almost every night for the last, 2 weeks probably.
Nice. Are you in season 2 or are you in season 3
We
now?
in season 2 still.
Okay. All
Yep. I
right.
think we're almost done with season 2.
Oh man, you're gonna have to call me as soon as you finish the
Yeah,
finale to
for
season 2,
sure.
because there's like this big thing that happens that's like, oh
Yeah,
my God. But yeah, season 3 was really, really good. It was really, really good.
nice.
And so I was afraid with so much time off because of the pandemic.
Yep.
There's like a year and a half or so between the time they wrapped up season 2 and when season 3 aired, or when
Oh,
they
wow.
started filming
Yeah.
season 3. And so I was like, man, are they going to kind of lose that magic a little bit, like lose like what makes the show so good? But
Yep.
they nailed it.
Nice.
So yeah, we love Sex Education. If you guys, the listeners, haven't seen it, check it out on
Yeah,
Netflix. It's
definitely.
very good, very funny, very self-deprecating.
Yeah, yeah.
It has like an awesome romance storyline.
Yep.
That's one of the main
Several of
reasons.
them.
Yeah,
There's
several
several
of
different
them.
romances kind of going on together.
Yeah, exactly. And we all know that I love the romance stuff and in these books and whatnot. And so that was like kind of one of the main reasons why I was following the show. But there's so many other things about it that draw you in as well. So as far as what I've been reading, so I read Sibylla Burns, loved that. And I also, while I was sick last week, I read or listened to Voice of War by Zach Argyle. And that's one of the books that we were looking at on our wish list when
Yeah.
we did the episode for
Yep.
this book. And yeah, I really, really liked it. I think, you know, it's kind of a fantasy book. There's like strange, like magical monsters and creatures and different like factions. And the main guy is this guy Chris, who believes that his family is kind of in trouble, like there's someone coming to like harm them.
Yep.
And so it's just kind of him being a badass and like protecting his family from these, you know, people that are coming to get him, and kind of this kind of conspiracy intrigue. There's like a conspiracy that's going on in the background. And so I really like that. And what I liked most about it, and you know, I was super sick, so I'm like super like foggy in the head, and felt like I couldn't even watch TV because I couldn't focus. This book, and I hope people take this in the way that I mean it. I mean it as a very good thing. It was very easy to follow. It
Yeah.
was like incredibly easy to follow. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't have depth or anything. It definitely does, and there's lots of little nuances. But it was the way that the story is laid out in front of you. I had a very easy time following it. I was never ever lost, and it was just really good to kind of have that break from some of this bigger like epic
Yep.
fantasy where, you know, you do have like, you know, 10 or 12 different point of views in one book. You know, this book was mostly I think it was like 3 point of views, 3 or 4, but they were all very easy to keep track of.
Nice.
Um, there was one reservation I had about it, and you know, I think, you know, I was trying to decide whether to talk about this or not, and I think that I decided the the brand that I'm trying to build for myself and hopefully for this podcast is a honest one. You know, if there's something that we didn't like, you know, we're going to feel free to talk about that.
Yeah.
And I I I really don't feel like it does anybody any favors to not talk about the things that we were a little bit more critical on.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't, you know, I don't think it's doing any favors to the authors to just kind of like blow smoke up their ass or whatever. And so I tend to be very honest in my reviews. And one of the reservations that I did have about this book was the magic system is very cool. It's very cool, but it is pretty much, if you took the magic system from Lightbringer and you took the magic system from Mistborn and put them together, it's
Oh,
like it was so similar. I was kind of like, I felt like I had like read this before, because
yeah.
the magic system is a push and pull magic system,
Yep.
and they even they see the lines like they do in Mistborn, where
Yep.
that tell them what they can push and pull.
Yeah.
And then in order to use the magic, they have to be able to see.
Yep.
They have to be able to see light. And just like Lightbringer, light goes in through the eye and comes out down the arm in the shape of like veins and stuff.
Yep.
And then they're able to push and pull. There was even they even talked about how there was light sickness, which I think was the same phrase they used in Lightbringer. And
Yeah.
they talk about being monochrome or bichrome, stuff like that. And so it was a lot of the same wording. And I really did like the magic system. I thought it was very fun, and it added cool things to the story and cool ways that it was used. But I did kind of feel like I was kind of like, I feel like I've kind of read this a little bit already,
Yep.
you know. And so I'm excited to I think the second book is coming out soon, the second audio book for the sequel to that. Um, and I'm excited to see where the magic system goes from there, because I think what they were trying to do in this first book was lay the foundation of things that we are familiar with and then kind of build on that, because
Yeah.
there are a few times in the book where the author kind of alludes that there's like other stuff outside of this magic system, or outside of what we've been shown so far. So I'm really hoping to see it kind of expanded upon, and kind of see where it goes.
Nice.
Also, the author for it lives in Seattle, where we
Oh,
live.
that's cool.
And so I was talking to him on Twitter a little bit, and he's like, "Oh, next year at Comic-Con, you guys will have to meet up with me at Comic-Con and say hi." I'm like, that'd be
Nice.
super cool.
Yep, that would be cool.
Yeah, and so up next, what I want to read next is, outside of what we're doing for this podcast. I mean, we could do some reviews for these or whatever, if I really like them, or if you really like them, or
Yep.
whatever. But what I just bought on Audible is this book called Jade City, by Fonda Lee, and it is it's like an urban fantasy. How do I explain it? It's urban fantasy set in like modern time, but it's through the eyes of like Yakuza,
Yeah.
like the Asian
Yep, like
gangsters.
gangs. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's all about this like kind of Yakuza like mob operating in this urban fantasy world. So there's like magic, and they use this stuff called jade to do their magic, and
Yep.
it allows them to do all sorts of different things. And it's kind of like a big commodity. So
Yeah.
I haven't gotten super far in it, but I assume that there's going to be a lot of buying and selling of
Yep.
jade, and kind of doing some illegal stuff. And so I'm really excited to get into that. I'm a couple hours in at this point, and I really like it so far. The only thing that's a little bit difficult about it is all of or not all, but most of the names in the book are like very, very like Asian inspired.
Yeah.
And so when you're getting all these names kind of thrown at you,
Hard to follow.
it's really hard to follow,
Yeah.
and hard to remember like who's who.
Yep.
And so I definitely had to go back a couple times and make sure that I had the names right. But I'm really liking it so far. And it's a trilogy, and her third book in that trilogy is coming out soon. So that's why I'm reading it. Also, a book that is coming out on Audible on Tuesday, and one of the reasons why I'm reading Jade City now, hopefully I can finish it by Tuesday so I can pick this up, is Of Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill. I hope I'm not butchering his last name. And I wanted to read it for the longest time, but it wasn't on Audible. And so he was able to find a audiobook narrator and get that all figured out. So that's coming out on it'll be out by the time this video is posted, but it's coming out October 5th.
Nice.
And so I'm very excited to start that. I talked to Ryan a bit on Twitter. He's a very cool person. And I also want to, I've kind of been feeling the itch to keep going with that Unwind series.
Oh, yeah?
I'm like, I don't know. I just like, I keep, it's so.
You're like, you try to push it so far out of your mind because how brutal it is, but you just keep going back.
Yes, I'm like, dude, I read it and it scarred me so much.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, there's no way I can read the sequel. But
Yeah.
literally ever since I read it, I think about it like at least once a week.
Yeah.
I think about it, and I'm like, Ah,
Like,
I
I might have to
wonder.
do this.
I'm like, I wonder what happens in the rest of the story. Like, I just want to know, but it's so disgusting and brutal. And I'm just
Yep.
like, I don't know. I don't know if I can handle it. But yeah, so I've been playing with the idea of moving on to the second Unwind book. You should definitely read the first one
Yeah.
just so that
Just so I
yeah, just
know.
so you know. Yeah.
Yep.
Just so you can be like as scarred as I am.
Yeah.
Because misery loves company.
Exactly. Just gonna say that.
But also, what do you think about this? Halloween is, what, 27 days away at the time of
Yeah.
this recording.
Yep.
What do you think about reading a horror book, something scary
You
for
know, that
Halloween time?
that's a great idea. My girlfriend and I are watching a horror movie every night for
Oh,
this
really?
entire month. Yeah, so we
Okay.
got a list that we're going through. So I would totally enjoy trying out a horror book, you know,
Okay. Cool. Let me
later this month. That'd be sweet.
Yeah, I'll ask around on Twitter and see what the new good horror books are, and see what we can find for an episode as we get closer to Halloween.
Awesome.
That'll be really fun. All right, and so then next week, Gabe and I decided that next week's episode will be our next Dresden Files episode. We'll be talking about blood rights. It's been a pretty long time since we've put up our last Dresden Files episode, and so I'm definitely thinking that we need to get one in there. Yeah, we might have a special guest for that. I'm not entirely sure yet, but we might have someone joining us, so that'll be fun.
Yep.
Also, if anybody cares at all, I picked these up from Half Price Books yesterday. They're in very good condition. I found a pretty, I think, brand new version of The Lies of Locke Lamora.
Oh wow.
It's a very, very nice edition from the publisher. I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's Golans. And it's got like this very metallic lettering you can see there.
Yeah, I can see it. The reflection looks cool.
Yeah, and it just looks. Am I holding that the right way? Nope. It just looks very well done. I really like this. I also got. They also had the second book in the series in the same edition, so I got that one as well.
Nice.
And then I have been going to Half Price Books for several months now, looking for this book because I didn't want to pay all the money for an Audible version of this book just for me not to like it. But I'm gonna try reading The Eye of the World, which is the first book in the Wheel of Time series.
Oh, okay.
And so I finally found it at Half Price Book. I've been looking for months and months, and every time I go there, they never have the first book because the TV show is coming out soon. So everybody's bought the first book and they're all reading it. They don't want to give it up. But now the TV show is just a couple weeks away. Nice. And so everyone's like, oh yeah, I read Eye of the World.
Read it here. Give them back.
I'll give it back to Half Price Books. And it's got this really cool art on the inside.
That does look cool. It's all colonial kind of.
Yeah. Just like this kind of medieval village. I really, really, really liked it. This is a big boy. This is a big book. Probably one of the biggest, or it's definitely the biggest paperback I own. It's significantly bigger than.
Oh yeah, no shit. It really is.
Yeah.
How many pages is it?
It is 670.
Oh,
but
yeah,
I think
that's a big boy.
I think in the smaller paperback version, because there's obviously not as much room on the page for all the words, I think it's probably up in the 1,000 or so.
Yeah, I believe that.
yeah, and I'm still reading, still trying to get through this 1,280 page Sanderson book.
Yeah,
But I might put that on pause to try reading Eye of the World and see if I get into it.
for sure.
All right, so let's talk about Lightbringer. Yeah. Let's so we're talking about the Black Prism, the first in the Lightbringer saga, written by Brent Weeks. Right now we will be going into full spoilers for this episode. So if you haven't read the book, please pause this, come back later after you've read it, because there are some really big twists that you
Yes.
do not want spoiled for you.
Yes.
And so please pause this, go read it, and come back, and then watch this discussion.
Yep.
So spoilers in 3, 2, 1. You've been warned. Okay, so the Black Prism. So did you read this twice?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay. What did you think on your first read through, and what did you think on your second read through?
So the first read through was it was good. I enjoyed it, and the first half was like very confusing.
Yeah.
Getting all, you got a lot of information really fast. And then of course as you go on, you learn more, you realize more. But then the second book, it takes what you know, and then your mind expands on it, and then you get a lot more, and you notice these little things. So of course, second reread was way better. But the first and second, I would say that I liked them equally, because I still on the first one got a lot out of it.
Okay.
And learned more. So I would say that second reading was awesome. First was great. But I definitely learned a lot more in the second one.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I read this the first read through, and honestly, the first maybe 3 hours or so, I was kind of thinking, oh my God, are we gonna DNF this book?
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I'm like, this is really, really hard to read.
Yep.
And I was going from The Expanse to this.
Oh yeah. See, that's a tough transition there.
Yeah, it was a really, really tough transition. And the first 3 hours or so, I was so lost, and I was just like, I might just have to set this down. But the thing that kept me going was that we chose this book.
Yep.
And we decided to commit to it.
Yep.
And so I was like, nope, we gotta go. And so I got onto Google, and luckily I didn't get spoiled.
Yeah.
I didn't get anything spoiled for me, but I did have to look up a few things. And I had to look up what the hell was going on with the magic system.
Yep.
I had to look up a couple things about Gavin-Gyle and Dazengyle that
that's
I was
a big
super
clusterfuck.
Yeah. And so there was a couple things along the way that I really had to look up, and by the time I got all the way through the first book, I liked it, but I wasn't like, oh my God, I'm so excited for this. You know what I mean? And so, and I also felt like when I got through the first read, I was like, okay, I definitely didn't catch everything. There's things that I definitely don't understand still, and I don't know if I'm going to. And so, I read the next Expanse book, and then I came back and read this a second time. And the second time, I liked it so much more.
Yeah.
The second read through really, honestly, I think if I hadn't read it the second time, I probably wouldn't have read the second book in the series.
Yeah.
And so reading it through the second time, I understood every little thing for the most part, besides the stuff we're not supposed to know yet.
Yep.
But everything that is laid out for you in the first book, I totally understood and got a really good grasp of, especially some of the stuff with Karis and kind of the weird love triangle between Karis, Dazen, and Gavin. I was
Yep.
super
Yeah,
confused
that
on
was
all of
very,
that.
very confusing. I think even after most of the second reread, I'm somewhat confused on that point.
Yeah, we'll talk about it down below.
Yep.
I have it laid out.
Perfect.
And yeah, and so I was super confused on it, but the second reread, or the I guess the first reread, I was like, oh, like this makes way more sense, like because you're going into it in the second reread or in the second read already knowing that Dazen is Gavin and Gavin is Dazen.
Yeah, yep.
And so it puts everything in way more perspective, like stuff that I didn't pick up the first time.
Yep.
And so yeah, I finished my reread today about maybe 3 hours ago or so, or 4 hours ago. And I was like, if I hadn't already bought Jade City, I probably would have just bought the second book and kept going, because
awesome.
I really liked it. I really like the way it ends. I love the things that it sets up.
Yep.
And yeah, I am not entirely sure if this would be a series that would be in my top 10 or top 15, but I really did enjoy it, and I think it's gonna be a good read. What was your kind of level of, oh, I'm so into this? Like, what did you get any of the same feelings that you did with the Night Angel trilogy at all?
So yes and no. I think that so the Night Angel trilogy, right? Something that was like one of the first, that was like right there with the Dresden Files, one of the first like fantasy grimdark books that I ever read, ever listened to. And so I think that holds a pretty tight hold on my, I guess, a bias, you could say, maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that I think there's a lot of points in, the Black Prism that are, I can notice some similarities and that I loved, and it was nice to see. But then I feel like it didn't grab me as hard as it did with the Night Angel trilogy. Like it wasn't like a flat out like, I need to drop in everything I'm doing and I'm gonna read this because I want to read it. But it was good enough to like you said, want to read the next book. It was a great book, but it definitely didn't smack me as hard as the Night Angel trilogy did it. And again, I think maybe that's just because I'm like a little biased. I don't know, because I really like the Night Angel trilogy, but
no, for sure. I think that's totally fair. And the Night Angel trilogy holds a very special place in my heart as well. And I think the interesting thing about this book was it reminded me of Night Angel trilogy only because Brent Weeks wrote it.
Yeah,
and
that's a good way to say that. Yep.
Yeah, like you could see a couple similarities in like his storytelling.
Yeah.
But other than that, as of right now on book 1, I definitely like Night Angel trilogy way more. And who's to like, maybe we'll get to like the 5th book in this series,
it'll just be nuts,
and it'll be nuts, and we'll be like, oh my god, this is so good. But yeah, it definitely didn't have that like I don't know if campy isn't the right word, but just like that very lovable feeling that I got when I read Night Angel for the first time. Like I just had this immediate like draw to it, and just this immediate need to like read more, like you said, like drop everything and read this series. And so while I was listening to this book, I was kind of like, oh, I really want to read Night Angel.
For real. And I would agree. That definitely popped in my head several times.
Yeah. I was definitely like, there was more than a couple times where I was like, I kind of wish this was Night Angel. Like, I kind of wish I was reading Night Angel. I was
For sure.
enjoying this for what it was, but I was also like, man, I really want to read Night Angel sometime in the near future. Maybe we'll do that.
I would love to.
Maybe we should do Night Angel either at the very end of this year or in early next year, and
Yep.
we'll make it a goal for
Yep. Sounds
for
good to me.
some amount of time. We'll figure it out. So this is going to be a difficult episode as we discuss Gavin and Dazen.
Yes.
I was gonna ask you how you want to go about this. Do you want to the brother who is in the outside who is taking care of Kip, do we want to just call him Gavin and the guy that is in the prison call him Dazen?
So that's
Or do we want to reverse it?
That's where I got so confused. And for my sake, I think we should call Gavin Dazen, because even in the book,
Okay.
like I remember the first time that they said like the first time that they said, right, that Gavin's not Gavin, right? Gavin's the one that's locked up down in the color prison or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so I got and I guess we don't have to, but I got so confused because I was like, wait, but that's Dazen. And then the narrator will be like, or and then Gavin said this, and I'm like, oh, I'm so frustrating because I know that it's not Gavin.
Yeah, and then sometimes the narrator would even call the one on the outside Dazen.
Yeah, and then exactly.
Yeah, and so it was very I was kind of listening to it and I was like, man, this is a really great idea, but Brent Weeks kind of dug himself a hole.
Yeah.
In it's got to be so hard for Brent Weeks to like tell this story, and he's trying to sit down at his computer and like, how am I going to convey this to the reader? Like,
how, for sure.
Like, how am I going to go about this? And so I can only imagine how difficult that is. So you want to refer to the guy who is on the outside as Dazen and the guy who is imprisoned Gavin.
I kind of do just want to keep it real, but then at the same time, like that might be more confusing to like the readers and stuff. So maybe that's not the best idea.
Whatever you feel like. I don't really care. I could do it either way, I think.
No, you're good. Let's go back. We'll call the guy on the outside Gavin, because then that's keeps in line with the books anyways.
Okay. All right. So what was your initial reaction? Because the plot twist, the twist that Gavin is Dazen and Dazen is Gavin, that happens fairly early on.
Yeah.
What was it, very shocking to you, or how did you feel?
No, it absolutely was. It was very shocking. I was at work and like I did one of these, the gasp, right? Because I was like, no freaking way, dude.
Yeah.
And then, it was very shocking, and I would have not expected it.
It was one of those things where, it kind of says it offhandedly, and then it goes into more detail.
Yes.
And so it was one of those things where because I think it happens when Gavin visits the prison, when he comes and visits his brother who is in prison.
Yep.
And it's kind of mentioned, and I'm like, did I hear that right? Like,
yeah, exactly. You're like rewinding. You're like, this can't be right.
Yeah, I'm like, is that what Brent is doing? And so I went back and I was like, oh my God, this is going to be so crazy.
Yep.
And then when you get outside of that scene and you're realizing all of these connections, like all the people on the outside think that he is Gavin.
Yeah.
And so your brain is like making all these new connections, like, wait, that means Karis was like, but Karis was in love with Gavin. So this guy isn't actually Gavin, and she thinks, and so it just became like this huge,
it is wild,
huge
dude.
thing.
It's wild.
I loved it.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So, like I said, this book is very Brent Weeks stylistically. He has a certain way of forming a narrative, and it shows here. Although this book is nothing like Night Angel trilogy as far as plot, there are many things that Brent Weeks likes to do that he does in this book, like the I'll try to be very careful with this, but the single character plot twist like we get in Night Angel, where we find out who Durzo Blint actually is.
Yep.
And he did the same kind of thing with Gavin and Dazen, and that's why I'm so surprised that it happened so early on in this book, because the thing that happened with Durzo was at the very, very, very end of the first book. It was like one of the last things that happened. And so kind of this switcheroo thing that happens, it seems like Brent is really into that, and that's kind of his thing. He also really likes these colors. Remember all the Kakari in the Night Angel trilogy? There were all these different colors. And while I was reading this, I was kind of wondering if I was like, is this basically a very far away prequel to Night Angel? Like, what if all this color magic ends up becoming what the Kakaris are?
Oh, wow.
And so I was kind of stuck on that for a while. I'm like, it has to be. And then unfortunately, I looked it up online, and Brent Weeks has come out and publicly said it's not in any way related to Night Angel. It's not in the same world, at least.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of bummed. I was like, man, this would be so cool if this was all connected. Yeah. He also uses some of the same lingo that he used in Night Angel trilogy, like rent girl. He uses that in this book. I thought that was kind of funny when I heard that near the end. I think Kip says, I'm spending more time on my back than a rent girl.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said.
And I'm like, oh man, that brings me back. Yeah, and there was a whole bunch of other kind of like shout outs and stuff to Night Angel fans. I was listening to the Legendarium podcast on their episode of this book, and they said something that I really wholeheartedly agree with. So I'll just say what they said and then I'll explain. If Night Angel trilogy is Mistborn, then Lightbringer is the Stormlight Archive. And I know you haven't read Stormlight, but Mistborn is kind of this narrowly character focused, gritty, dark fantasy, which is more or less what Night Angel trilogy is. It focuses on Kylar and Durzo and a couple other characters until you get to the third book and it just goes crazy.
Yeah.
But so there's that kind of similarity that I very much see. And then Lightbringer, so Stormlight is Brandon Sanderson has said that it's his like his big masterpiece. It's like what all his work has been leading up to.
Yeah.
And people have said the same exact thing about Lightbringer. They're like, all of the work that Brent Weeks put into the Night Angel trilogy was to get him to Lightbringer. And so there's that similarity, but also Stormlight is kind of this bigger, like epic fantasy, and Night Angel trilogy was kind of, like I said, like a more narrow, like assassin dark fantasy. And comparatively, Lightbringer is also kind of this bigger epic fantasy. And so I thought that was just like a really interesting comparison that I I really liked a lot. If Night Angel trilogy is Mistborn, Lightbringer is Stormlight. I thought that was very well said.
Yep, I would agree. I really need to read Stormlight.
I think you'll like it. I'm not very far in it, but I really really like it a lot.
Nice.
Um, okay, so what did you think of the narrator Simon Vance?
Oh, I loved the narrator. I thought
Yeah,
he was so good, and the voices sounded just like I would picture them
yeah,
in my head, and the way I did female voices really well.
yeah.
Got the accents down, and you know, it kind of reminded me of oh God, and I'm gonna blank this in front of everybody. Who's the narrator for Dresden Files? Why am I forgetting his name?
James Marsters.
Yes, James Marsters. It kind of reminded me of that because he does female voices really, really, really well
Yeah,
too. And like it's hard for me to like, I don't even know that it's not a female talking. So it was
right.
cool to see. But I really enjoyed it. I thought his performance was incredible.
Yeah, yeah. I felt similarly. I thought he was very good. He was definitely a step above most, I
Yeah,
think. You know,
yeah,
I've I've read some books recently, and there's a few books that I really want to read, but the narrator is just so middle of the road. You know, with how many audiobooks we've listened to, my bar is so high.
yeah, for sure,
And, you know, some of these books that I really want to read, I'm like, okay, so I wouldn't be listening for the narrator. You
yep,
know, like
yep,
it's like I just want to hear the book. I'm not there for the narrator.
for sure.
And I thought you know, for me, I don't think the narrator was, you know, he wasn't like a Nick Podell, but I think he did a good enough job where the narration never ever brought me out of the story. I
Yeah,
was never like, I can't focus on the story because the narrating is bad or
yep,
inconsistent or
yep.
anything. It was always consistent. And so yeah, I think he did a good job. I enjoyed him.
I agree.
Um, so what did you think of this talking about like the storytelling, like how the story is conveyed to us? um what did you think about the different point of views? Did you like the characters that we got, that it kind of jumped around to?
So yes, I did enjoy the characters, and again at first, it was kind of hard to follow all this stuff going on. Um, but I did enjoy it, and I think he did a really good job switching between third person and first person. Not even that, but more in like they would have this like dialogue, right? Somebody asked them to do something, like, hey, well, you go do this, and then dialogue in their head says, I don't want to fucking do that, and then he says,
Yeah,
all right, yeah, I'll do that. So like you always hear
right.
this kind of inner monologue where they're like,
Yeah,
like disagreeing or like just being honest with themselves, right? But then they're like, sure, I'll do whatever you want and
right.
whatnot. So that was super fun. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I thought it was good.
Yeah, you know, it's very similar to I've only read about, I think, maybe three quarters or so of the first Law trilogy, the first book in the first Law trilogy.
Yeah,
And there's this character called Glokta, and he also kind of has this inner monologue, and it's always like very different than what he actually says.
yeah, yeah,
And so he's always like thinking these very like horrible thoughts, and then what he says isn't always that. And so I kind of drew that connection there. I love the like when Liv is asked to describe Kip's mom by the person who's like blackmailing her,
yep,
and in her head she's like skinny, haze addict, sunken eyes, and then in real life she says, "Oh, olive skin, wonderful hair, beautiful
yep,
eyes."
yep.
And I'm like, I love that.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly.
Yeah, and then Kip has like this everybody's inner monologue is a little self-deprecating, but Kip's is definitely like, he does not think very highly of himself. And he's got this inner monologue that is just super like just always saying something super funny and down about himself.
Yep.
He's learning drafting with Liv. Liv is teaching him drafting, and her dad shows up, who Kip has told her is dead.
Yeah.
And she goes, "Father, I heard you were dead." And then Kip's inner monologue goes, "Ah, yes, that would be me, Kip, bringer of false bad
Yes,
tidings."
yes, yes.
I love that a lot. um I I also really liked the flashbacks that would happen. You know, a lot of books kind of do these flashbacks like in between chapters as kind of these interludes in between chapters, and they'll do like a flashback to show you what happened before.
Yeah.
But you know, Brent Weeks is just such a master. He kind of like wove these into the ongoing narrative without skipping a beat. There was this one moment where um you know, Gavin is out on the balcony in the same area where Kip and Liv are learning drafting.
Yeah.
And Corvin, yeah, I think Corvin Danavis shows
Yep.
up, Liv's dad. And of course, nobody else knows that they are actually friends and they're actually
Yeah.
close with each other.
Yep.
And so Corvin Danavis shows up and they're both out on the balcony talking to each other. And then all of a sudden, the narrative just kind of slips into this flashback, and it goes into this completely different scene where it's telling us like how how Gavin and Corvin decided to take over Dazen. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like how Gavin like imprisoned, like knocked his brother out, imprisoned him, and took his place. And it's this whole flashback telling us how that happened. And you would think that that would be super confusing. And I don't want to speak for everybody, but I, especially on my second reread, I was like, oh, like this is slipping into a flashback and it's slipping right back out,
Yeah.
and I'm not super like turned around because of it.
Yeah. You're
Like
not lost. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, I felt like that was so well done, and the way that he um I don't know how to explain it, just the kind of the way that he like wove it in there and just perfectly transitioned into it and transitioned out of it, like a completely different scene in the middle of this other scene that we're
Yeah.
having.
Yeah.
And I thought, I was like, wow, that is really the mark of a very good
That's
author.
right. I would say that's talent right there
Yeah.
in a nutshell.
And it happened a few other times, like when Karis was riding towards the army to go spy, and she talks about how she became pregnant and everything that happened with
Yeah.
the real Gavin, and or Dazen.
Yep.
And just kind of like she's on her horse riding into the army and then slips into this flashback and tells us about how all of that happened, and then goes back to the present. And yeah, I just think it was done super well.
Yep. I agree.
What did you think of this world that we're kind of put into? Just like kind of everything that's going on with the Chromaria, and like how they kind of rule and what they do to people that break their halo. And like,
Yep.
what did you think of this whole kind of plot device and world building in that way?
So I really liked it. I think that I think there was a certain amount of politicalness, for lack of a better way to say that, it
Yeah.
was involved in the book and the writing that I think made it it gave it a little more substance. It was a little easier to grab onto and see. And the seven satrapies, that honestly, like it's not that I didn't follow it, but I didn't really peg it in my mind because we only, focused on the
Right.
Chromaria and then
Yeah.
whatever what's the name of that city that they end up trying to take back or whatever?
Is it Gaveston or
Yes,
Garriston? Garriston.
Garriston. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then that, and so like those I could focus on and hold on to,
Right.
and it was good. And then another kind of not political, but like the Chromaria is like this kind of overseeing body, right? Like uh, they're like a high church or something like that, where they have a certain amount of
Yeah.
control. And of course, the Prism is basically the kind of leader, although the white is, he even says that the white is like pretty much
Re-
holds all the cards.
Yeah.
But so it was cool, and I love the way that I think this was a very interesting thing to weave into here about the magic system. And I know we'll get into this, but just goes with
Sure.
it. With the whole breaking the Halo thing, I thought that was very interesting, and the way that they did that was super cool. Um, and then it's kind of gives a Chromaria like this charge, like, all right, so we're here for the good, and we got to do this. And then when people go, use too much, draft too much, and use too much light, and then they break their Halo, and basically they go nuts, and they can start like you know, weaving themselves with Luxon and like doing all sorts of weird stuff that kind of makes them crazy.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
it kind of brings up an interesting thing about the Chromaria because at the end, I think it's Lord Omnichrome that's talking to
yeah,
Liv, and he's like, do people go crazy when they break their halo? Like, do
yeah,
they actually?
for sure.
And it's kind of this question of
Yep.
like, are people going crazy when they break their halo, or does and we don't know this yet,
Yeah.
but does breaking the halo maybe give them more power or
Yeah.
something? And so then, just like any human is capable of, like taking that power too far and it kind of controlling them.
Yep.
So yeah, that's probably one of my number one questions that I'm really excited to learn in the coming books. I think we're definitely going to find out that breaking the halo does not make someone go crazy.
Yeah,
I,
and so when you were just saying like I've had the same thoughts, and Lord Omnichrome is what made me have those thoughts, right? Because this,
yeah,
he's
he's
talking, he's
very
very well put together.
mhm,
He seems very smart and very like he's very tactical, right? He doesn't have any stray thoughts that are like making anything weird or whatnot. And so I
yeah,
had that exact same thought the second that I heard him talk. I was like, wait, this guy's supposed to be crazy, but
yeah,
he's not. He might be a
right,
little, maybe a little, some delusions of grandeur or whatever, but he doesn't
definitely.
seem crazy.
Yeah, yeah, very, very well said. I think, yeah, I think we're gonna find out
Yep.
that what the Chromaria is doing is they they do not want other people to have more power than them.
Yeah, for sure.
And
There's
they
definitely,
don't
definitely a lot of that going on.
they they don't want there to be any loose ends. And
Yeah.
so they tell everybody that these people go crazy
Yep.
and that they need to be killed. And what I think it is? I think it's the same exact reason why they don't like Gavin, because he has been emperor, he has been prism longer than anybody else before him,
Yeah.
and they like having a new prism every 7 years because then they're new and they're more malleable and they can
Yep.
control them a little bit
Yep.
more. But Gavin's been a prism for 16 years,
Yeah.
and so he doesn't really take their shit anymore.
Yep.
And they're kind of like, what the hell, like we can't control him really.
For sure. Yeah.
And so I think it's the same thing with the drafters. And you know they if they just kill off the drafters every however many years it takes
Yep.
to break a halo, then it makes it much easier for them to control the masses.
Yeah, for sure.
And so then it kind of brings you to this question where it's like, who is the bad guy?
Yeah, absolutely. And
You,
that's, the Chromaria is this voice of good, but I think it charges under a false banner, right? I think that
yeah,
I would I would definitely say that. I think that they're pretty twisted in their way of thinking and very power hungry. Or maybe not power hungry, but don't want anybody else to have. That's what you just said. They don't want other people to have power.
Yeah, I think, the whole book is kind of filled with these questions of who who is actually the bad guy,
Yep.
because you know the the Chromaria is definitely like this ruling class, and like if
Yeah.
you really look into it, you could probably say that they're the bad guy. But
Yep.
the the thing is for, I don't know, maybe half the book, maybe more than half the book, we're kind of led to believe that Gavin is the bad brother because he like imprisoned his brother, and
Yeah.
he's keeping him down in like this blue prison,
Yep.
and he's like, being horrible to him. Basically, we're like, who would do this?
Yeah.
But then as you learn more about the guy in the prison, as you learn more about the real Gavin,
Yep.
and start to see some of his flashbacks and some of the things that he did, it's kind of like, oh man, like he kind of belongs in that prison.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
he was he was absolutely terrible to Karis, and used her for for political power.
Yep.
And she even says that the whole, I want to talk about Karis in detail in a little bit, but
Yep.
she even says that the first night that they had sex, he basically came into the room and like very like forcefully fucked her,
Yeah.
and like it was not making love by
For
any
sure.
means. Like
Yeah.
he just like got in, got what he needed,
And
got
then
it done,
left.
and got
Yeah.
out.
For sure.
And and then leaves her with this child. And then he does a whole bunch of other stuff during the war that was not okay. And so it's kind of this thing of, is Gavin, or like the new Gavin, the guy on the outside, is Gavin the good brother? You know what I mean? For like imprisoning this really bad guy.
Yeah.
And we see the way he treats Kip, which I also want to talk about in a little bit,
Yep.
and stuff like that. And by all accounts, he's a very decent person. And that's another thing. Speaking of which, that's another thing that's kind of a Brent Weeks style thing, is people changing their name and becoming a new person.
Yeah.
Like Viridiana became V,
Yep. Yep.
and Azoth became Kyler, and Durzo,
Yep.
he's
Yep.
got
Yep.
a couple different names.
For several.
And
Yeah.
yeah. And each time somebody in the Night Angel trilogy changes their name, it comes with a very different character change.
Yeah.
I've talked about it multiple times, how when Viridiana becomes V, she becomes a very different character that I really
Yes.
grew to love.
Yes. Me
And
too.
so that's kind of an interesting thing that Brent Weeks likes to do. But then if you're looking at Lord Omnichrome and King Haradul, King Haradul was definitely a bad guy, but is Lord Omnichrome a bad guy?
Yeah, no,
I don't know.
Yep, I don't know either. Yeah, that's hard to say because the way that they set it up, they want you to think that he is, right?
Yeah.
But then you see some of this stuff and you're like, I don't, you just can't say it yet because there's a chance that you could be wrong.
Yeah, I really can't say that he is,
Yeah.
because everything he said to Liv,
Yep.
like he told her about the Chromaria and what they do, and how how he doesn't kill his color whites, and
Yeah.
nothing, and they're not crazy, and basically tells her that this whole thing is kind of a big kind of like political conspiracy for
Yep.
power kind of thing. And it's like, man, is Lord Omnichrome on the right side? I mean, he's like a rebel, obviously,
Yeah.
but like, the Chromaria might be the bad guys. I'm
sure.
pretty sure
Well,
they
yeah,
are.
and Lord Omnichrome too. Like I remember towards the end there, like when when he was like bantering with Liv, right? She's like, if you spare my friends, like I'll come with you, I'll come work for you.
Yeah.
And it just in that conversation right there, like that's when I could tell. But then there's other parts further on where like, what's the part? Basically, it was like, so his motives are not what they seem, basically.
Sure.
And so like I remember somebody said something about like no, he doesn't want, he wants us to kill that false king or whatever that the king is, right?
Yeah.
He's not working for him. He's trying to like usurp or like get past him, but doing it in such a way where like you can't, it's hard to like tell that's what he's doing.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, he was temporarily teamed up with King Haradul.
Yeah.
And Liv asks him like, well, if basically in so many words, if you're one of the good guys, why are you teamed up with King Haradul? And he tells her kings don't last forever.
Yeah.
And then a couple chapters later, Kip goes to kill King Haradul, and Iron Fist tells him, no, that's what Lord Omnichrome wants.
Exactly. Yes, that's the part. Yeah.
Yeah, not knowing that Lord Omnichrome is actually a good guy.
Yeah.
Or if he is, I don't know.
Yep.
But and so it's kind of this big web of people not knowing what they don't know.
Yeah.
And
that's a good way to describe it.
It's very, very interesting.
It is, yeah.
And so I liked seeing that whole thing. And so now Lord Omnichrome has an army. He has a city. He has garrison.
Yeah. Just amassed a lot of power. A lot of power after that scene.
Yeah, because he's essentially the new king.
Yep.
And
he's a damn powerful one too. I feel like his ability to use magic is like immensely powerful. Like, yeah, just my thoughts, like he'd be up there with Gavin. I feel like they would be on even ground if they were to fight.
I am super, super excited to see that battle.
Yep.
And
me too.
The thing that's cool about Lord Omnichrome too is he has built himself like in layers a suit of armor in different Luxon.
Yeah, exactly. And and he's got a crown and everything too. Like he did the whole 9 yards.
I thought that was like super, super cool. Yep. And his eyes, he's broken his halo, so his eyes flash with each color that he's feeling.
Yeah.
And so I think it was Liv that was saying that his eyes went from very calculating blue to like an angry red. Like I'm like, oh, that's very cool.
Yep.
And
I would agree. It's freaking sweet. And he's a polychroma, is that what they call him?
Yeah, he's
more than 3, or is it more than 2?
No, it's more than 3. I think it's the most you can be without being a prism.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. I think he's probably missing super violet.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay, so that's kind of the world building and the world that we're in.
Yep.
I did feel like this was a much brighter world than Night Angel. Although literally brighter because of all the colors.
Yeah, yeah.
Did this make you think of Legos a lot?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Not only that, but it made me think of like Crayola crayons. Like I thought of crayons a crap ton when I was reading this book.
Yeah, definitely. But like even like the wall that Gavin builds, all I could think about was like this Lego wall of all the different colors.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so the world, the feeling, the overall feeling of the world is a lot more lighthearted. Yeah, I guess lighthearted.
I think you could say that. I mean, it's definitely still has its kind of grim, darkish parts and whatnot, but it's definitely lighter, more lighthearted than
Night Angel.
For sure. Yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of interested. It was interesting to see just kind of a brighter fantasy world where outside of the Prism War and outside of like the current struggle that's going on where Gavin and Kip are, the rest of the world is pretty standard. Like it doesn't seem like there's any major issues in the world yet.
Yeah,
we'll probably find out some more in the next book, but
for sure.
Okay, so let's talk about the magic system. Yes. What this is a very, very unique magic system. What was kind of your process of figuring out how the hell this magic system works?
Yeah.
And what did you think of it overall once you finally kind of understood how it works?
Okay. Yeah. So going into it, I was like, you sent me a thing about the magic, whatever. I didn't watch it. I didn't read it.
Oh,
I didn't look at it. And so I went through like it was like super confusing at first, of course,
yeah.
right? Because it's
That's
you
why I
get
sent you the video.
yep, I know. You get used but I'm kind of glad I didn't, honestly, because like
Okay.
because it and I'll get into that in a second, but moving from magic system to magic system, right? Like you get kind of attached to a certain like Dresden Files. Like Dresden Files magic is my favorite magic,
Yeah,
hands down.
mine too. Yeah.
And then of course Mistborn was super cool, right? The way that you have to like kind of use something else to get your power and whatnot. It's not just an act of will thing. So that was awesome. And at the beginning I was very confused, what all the colors did, what they were, how come they happened. But as you read and as you go on, like it does, I think it does a really good job of explaining, kind of how it works in these little moments. Not, not like directly, but like he'll like tell Kip something and then you're like, okay, that's why that works.
Yeah.
Um, Stuff like that. But again, super unique. So cool, man. It is like it might be one of the coolest magic systems I've ever seen, and cool in like a wow factor. Like
Yeah.
this is crazy. How did he think about this? And I love the way that they have to use light and the boundaries within that, right? Because there has to be light and there has to be the colors in order to use the
Yeah.
magic. You can't draft unless you're the prism. Unless you're Gavin, he can do all of it. But I loved it. And I think even throughout the end, I was still learning more. And then the other thing that I want to say really quick too is the way that they use the magic is crazy because there's a lot of science behind it. Like when he's like, they're on what do they call it? It's not a boat. They say
The
something
skimmer.
else. A skimmer. So, Gavin builds a skimmer and they're headed to go get Kip or go, see what's up with Kip. And
Yeah.
the way that he talks about the different, like you got, drag that comes in a thing and he like narrowed the hole to make the front end lighter and this and that. And like it was just so cool. And there's restrictions like too, like gravity's force is a thing. So they can't,
Yeah.
if they try and like throw out it's just like, what is that other, oh, it's like Mistborn, right? I think
Yeah.
that comes into play in Mistborn. And so that was super cool. Sorry, I'm rambling now, but that was awesome.
No, yeah, I'm really glad you liked it. Yeah, at first I was super confused, especially more than anything, I was confused with the terminology
Yeah.
because I was like, what does drafting mean? Like
Yeah.
and really all it means is like pulling in energy to
And then,
use.
yep.
But I was so confused. I was like, what is drafting? What does that word mean? And so for the longest time I was so confused on that, and I kind of understood what Luxon meant,
Yeah.
but I didn't fully comprehend that it was just like the magical substance.
Yeah.
Because what's so interesting about this magic system is, you know, Dresden Files deals with magic that is very scientifically based and it's
Yeah.
all like explained and whatnot, but it's also kind of abstract, like a tracking spell.
Yeah.
That's not like two parts of a physical thing that are working together to
Yeah.
make a
No, for
tracking
sure.
spell.
Yep.
it's it's like a mental link between him and
Yeah.
whatever he's tracking. And so with this, and this is why it made me think of Legos, is he has a physical substance that is doing something and he
Yeah.
can shape it into whatever he wants.
Yep.
So like with the armor, I'm sure there would be like a green layer on the inside for
Yep.
like softness and like a rubbery, like flexible feeling,
Yep.
padding. And then there would be blue because that's like super hard.
Yep.
If there's another plate that's overlapping it, there would be blue, but then it would have a little bit of orange because the
So it could
orange is
flex.
lubricant.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting how all these colors do something different, and they all help to build certain things. Like I would imagine if you were making like a brick wall out of Luxon, you would do like, I don't know, like blue bricks and then green mortar in
Yeah.
between them because it's a little bit more flexible and it
Yep.
has some give, and it can take it's a little rubbery, it can take the weight of things.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, I was so confused at first, and it was one of the main things that made me think like, am I going to DNF this book?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it is explained later on.
Yeah. No, the first good chunk of the book, it doesn't give a lot of hints towards how everything works.
Yeah,
So it's like, it basically puts it in your hands. Like, all right, I'm gonna give you a little bit of information and you can decide what you want. And then of course
yeah.
later on it goes into detail. But
Yeah, once Kip starts drafting, that's
yeah.
when we start getting told how all this stuff works. But that's, not super far into the book, but it's pretty far into the book.
Yep.
And so yeah, for a while you're just kind of like, I don't know what any of this is, and I just have to keep going. And I'm really glad that I had that YouTube video, because after the first couple chapters of not knowing what was going on, I was like, I can't take this. And I went to YouTube and I found that video, and I still didn't understand everything, but it made more sense to the point where I was like, okay, I know what drafting is. Like, I know what that word means. I know what the word Luxon means.
Yeah.
Like I can go from here.
Yep.
And so yeah, I really enjoyed it, and all the very creative ways that it's used. I loved how each Luxon can be shaped into any shape. Like the shape, in the Dresden Files, if you're trying to make something into a specific shape, it's very, very difficult to make something a certain shape in the Dresden Files. But with this, the difficulty isn't in the shaping of an object. It's in the intellectual idea of how to use it.
Yes.
And so I thought it was interesting when I think somebody either mentions drafting tweezers or drafting a cup or whatever.
Yep.
And I thought it was funny because that's exactly what Kylar did in Night Angel Trilogy.
Yeah.
He turned his black Kakari hand into like a tweezers, and he turned it into like a what's the thing with the bulb on top, like turkey baster.
Yep.
And so I'm like, oh man, it's so, these things got to be connected somehow. Like the magic is so similar. I'm so mad that they're not in the same world.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like that. So blue is of course hard, like swords and arrows and stuff. And I loved when people would basically shoot blue blue knives at people. There was a couple times where somebody would just go boom, 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 and like shoot all these blue knives in the air. And I liked how Luxon bullets were explained, where like you have the red, which is flammable, but the yellow is what makes a spark.
Yeah.
And so you separate like the yellow and the red, and you have like this blue casing around it. And then when the blue like lets go a little bit and lets them mix, and then it explodes and it becomes like a bullet.
Yep, those are the Grenados.
Yeah, Grenados, right. And I'm like, dude, that is really, really cool. I love the way all these interact with each other.
Yes.
Green is a really versatile kind of thing. It's not, I didn't get the feeling that it was sharp like how blue is. Like blue
Yeah.
is a very sharp, like it can be used as a sword or whatever. But green can be hard, it can be rubbery, it can be flexible. You know, we the first time Kip makes a green ball, he starts out with a very hard green ball,
Yep.
but then he thins it and it becomes more flexible. So the more thin he makes the green, the more rubbery and flexible
Yep.
it can be. And so I really liked how that was kind of explained. He used it as armor and it made him stronger. And yeah, it's just very rubbery, which is actually great for armor if you think
Yeah.
about it. Like
Yep.
if you had you know, like we've both of us have probably seen like industrial grade rubber, like very,
Yep.
very thick rubber.
I
That
think
would
it's
be,
that, I would say think about like a tire, right? Tires
yeah,
tires are pretty hardcore.
yeah. Like that would be a really great armor
Yep.
against a sword, you know? And so then yellow is light and liquid, durable if done correctly, usually used in combination with other Luxins to make them more durable. So like when he was making like the blue bricks and stuff, he
Yep.
added yellow in to make it more, you know, cohesive,
Yep.
like rebar and cement.
Yeah.
What else do we got here?
And red
Oh,
too.
yeah, red was flammable, like gooey and sticky, I guess.
Yep.
Like what's the stuff? It made me think of what's the stuff in like flamethrowers before it gets set on fire?
Talking about
Um,
like napalm?
napalm, yeah, because napalm is the same way, right? It's like
Yeah.
kind of sticky and
Yep.
it's
And
like a liquid substance that
yeah.
becomes fiery.
Yep.
Oh, yellow can also, dude, this was so cool. Yellow can also be used as propulsion. Do you remember at the end where they're trying to escape Garriston and they see one of Omnichrome's people jump from building to building and she's got yellow in her
Yeah.
hands
Yep.
and she's
Yep.
pushing it to like double jump essentially. I'm
Yeah.
like, that's super cool.
Yep.
That's super awesome. Um, yeah, and then orange is slick and flexible. I don't really know, like, it didn't really say if it's like liquid or if it's like a more of a solid or what, but it's definitely known to be more oily, like a lubricant.
Yep.
Um, and then I think sub red is just better red.
I
And
think I think the sub red is like when people say like burning sub red, like if you think about like Dazen or I guess Gavin when he's down there, like he was trying to like draw the heat out of his body, kind of like King Killer, right?
that's
When
right. Yeah.
both does that. So I think sub red is like almost just like heat itself, I think.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, because the people who can see sub red see it as a heat coming off of
Yeah,
things,
yeah.
right? And then I really liked super violet.
Yeah, super
I
violet's super cool.
Yeah, I thought that would have been a really cool one to have. It's not like super it's not super durable, but it's like invisible. And so you can like mark things and like Gavin, when he was juggling the balls, he made a super violet track
Yeah,
that
yeah.
made the balls go around on. And so I thought that was super cool.
Versatile too. Like I'm gonna forget the names, but there's a scene where I don't know if it's Liv or I think it actually is Liv, where she like went into this like bar or whatever, and she could see that there's each table's got like this ultraviolet like bubble, right? And she calls it
Yeah.
like the server was like, "Do you want the muting?" And then she goes on to explain like, they have these super violet bubbles, and then you can put a fan in them. So like
Yeah.
air comes in and like cools you down and everything's quiet. And so that was when I was like, man, that you could do a lot with subviolet, I think. Or
Yeah.
super
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Super violet.
Yep.
It's it's really interesting to see all the ways that people use this magic. And you know, like Gavin even told Kip, he's like, magic isn't just used for like, you know, fun like decapitation
Yeah.
and weapons and stuff like that. He's like, magic is used as like field plows.
Yeah.
Like people use it to like plow their fields.
Yep.
And so it's really interesting to see how it's used. There's also emotions attached to each
Oh,
color.
yes, yes.
So I thought this was super interesting. I kind of had to look this up to get them all here.
Yep.
But green is wild, blue is very orderly and organized, red is very passionate and angry, orange is silver tongue and kind of like slick and like a smooth talker kind
Yep.
of person. And super violet, I don't think we found out what kind of
Yeah,
emotion
no,
comes
I
with
agree.
super
I don't
violet
I don't
yet.
think he said.
But yeah, again, Brent Weeks loves his colors in the magic system, much like various colors of the Kakari.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
I
they all do
thought,
different things. It's all
yeah,
diversified.
exactly. All the Kakaris had their own like different ways of
Yep.
doing things. So it's interesting to see it expanded upon in this book. All right, let's unless you have anything else to say about the magic system, do you want to talk about some of the characters?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay. Who stole the show for you? Like what was your main character in your head that you like to follow?
So it was almost a tie,
Mm,
but I'm a sucker for power, right? So Gavin
yeah.
Gavin was on my list for sure. That's who I like to follow. And then when Kip came along, it was totally Kip. I love to follow Kip. I loved the way that he started figuring stuff out and learning more about drafting and kind of the trials that he had to go through, and when he went Green Goblin and freaking fucked that dude up.
Yeah.
It was yeah, so that's probably, and of course, like I like Liv's arc too. Like I liked
Yeah.
learning a little bit more about her and like what her plans are, and then this kind of the sacrifice that she made
Yeah.
to save her friends and whatnot. And so probably between those three, it would be Kip, Gavin, and then Liv.
Yeah. I would say for me, if my favorite isn't Gavin, then it
Yeah.
is Liv.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Kip kind of riding in on the third spot.
Yep.
Yeah, I really liked Gavin just because he's just kind of like this really charming character
Yeah.
that is just very, very cool. He's always very cool. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yep.
he's just always like,
Very much so.
yeah, he's always very like in control of every
Yep.
situation.
And he's pretty
Very,
chill. Like he's pretty chilled out.
yeah.
Yeah.
And he seems to be like a pretty good guy.
Yeah.
Like I really, really liked a lot of the decisions that he made.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that he's had to give up in order to be who he is. One of them, and I'll talk about this when we get to Karis, but he had to give Karis up because she was betrothed to Gavin, the original Gavin.
Yep.
And he knew that if he went through with that betrothal, she would know that he was Dazen.
Yeah,
and he couldn't risk it.
Yep.
And so I love that. Yeah, is Gavin the good brother?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I do know. And then I don't know.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah, I thought that was such an interesting part of this book where everyone and no one is the good guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
definitely
it's
leaves you
so
confused. It's like you're in neutral ground the whole time because you could go one way or the other. Easily go one way or the other.
It's really, really hard to tell who the good guy is in this book, and especially who the good brother is, because we have a little bit of info on what the original Gavin was like, and it seems like he's a pretty bad guy.
Yep.
but also like why did Dazen Gavin not just kill his brother instead of putting him in
For
prison?
sure. Yep. That's one of my bigger questions. Is that one
Yeah,
right there? And why is he
it's
keeping him there? Why is he
yeah,
not just stop feeding him? You know,
yeah,
that's all it takes. And he even says that he's like I could solve a lot of problems if I just quit throwing that bread down there, but he
yeah,
doesn't, and he keeps it up. And hopefully, the next book, well, I'm sure we will, but we're gonna find out. I will be answered.
yeah, right, for sure. Um, yeah, I want to talk more about what Dazen is doing down in the prison when we get to his character in a
Yep.
minute. But I want to talk for a minute. And I'm gonna have to jump around to find a couple of these notes, but I absolutely loved one of my favorite interactions in this book was how Gavin treated Kip.
Yeah.
And this was a relationship that by the end had me very much tearing up.
Yeah.
Um, and it's very different than the initial relationship we see between Durzo and Kyler.
Yep.
Because right from the get-go, Gavin is like, you are my son.
Yeah.
And
You're my
I'm
natural
going,
son.
yeah, and I'm gonna take care of you, and you're not like I will give you anything you want,
For
basically.
sure.
Like not in like a, oh, I'll lavish you and give you anything you want, but any decision that you decide to make from here on out, I will support.
Yeah.
And so it was this very like supporting father figure that we don't really see that in fantasy a lot.
Yeah.
Especially with the whole especially with somebody being a bastard,
Yeah.
usually they are very like pushed to the side, like they
Yep.
don't want to be acknowledged, like nobody ever acknowledges their
Yeah.
bastard son. And he takes full responsibility for
Yeah.
Kip, and he even apologizes that he didn't know his mother well and that his actions during the war have affected Kip's life.
Yeah.
And even though he's not really this Gavin's son,
Yeah.
right? Like he's the guy that's in prison, he's his son.
Yep.
But Gavin, I think at Gavin's core, he loves his brother.
Yeah.
And
Yes, for sure.
he's going to I think that Gavin feels like if he is going to take over his brother's life, he is also going to take over his responsibilities.
Yeah.
And so, he goes and gets Kip and he does the right thing. He essentially from the beginning claims him as his son. Of course, at the
Yeah.
very end, there is like an actual like, okay, you
Moment
are
where,
officially my
yeah.
son.
Yes. Yes.
But right from the beginning, he's like you will be treated how I would treat my son.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was something that just very like I don't know why it touched me so much, but it was such an emotional part of the book for me. And it was extremely heartwarming. I wrote here, the relationship essentially boils down to Kip just wants to please Gavin, and Gavin just wants to protect and care for
Yeah.
Kip.
Yep.
And those
It's
are
like the literal father-son dynamic right there. Dynamic.
yes, absolutely. And though I love that those are the driving forces between how they interact with each other, because we could have Gavin come in and say like, I want to claim you as my son and all this, but have Kip be resentful and be like, fuck you, like I never knew you, like all this stuff, and like be like this angsty kind of teenager.
Yep.
But Kip kind of takes it all in stride, and he feels like he owes Gavin. And there's multiple times in the book where he's like I just wanted to do right by my dad.
Yeah.
And you know, even when he's going through the threshing,
Yep.
when they find out what kind of colors he can draft, you know, he's getting all this scary stuff around him, and it's getting crazy and getting crazy. And for him, it really boiled down to my father, the Prism, has put so much on the line to get me here and to support me in becoming a drafter. And you know, this is like his this is his reputation, and I want to please him. And
Yeah.
so he throws the rope away.
Yeah.
And he's like I can't allow myself to not pass this because I really want to please my dad. And then it shows Gavin in the other room being like this kind of like proud father figure, and he's talking to Liv because he knows that Liv comes from the same town as Kip.
Yeah.
And so he wants to hire Liv specifically so that Kip will have somebody he knows.
Yeah.
And that is like very, very sweet in and of
Yep.
itself.
Yep.
But while he's talking to her, he's like looking behind her at the crystal on the wall, wondering like, oh, what colors is he gonna get? What's he gonna be? And he's like the proud parent, like watching this thing, trying to figure out what his son is gonna become. And so anyway, I'm totally rambling, but I just loved that whole aspect of it all.
Yep.
And again, Brent Weeks loves these single character revelations, plot twists, like we talked about earlier when we find out that he's Dazen. Same thing with, not same thing, but similar thing with Durzo. Oh, and it was also interesting to see how the switch between the two brothers messed a lot of things up.
Yeah.
Like everything with Karis.
Yep.
So at the beginning of the book, she gets this note that says that Gavin has a child.
Yep.
And they like the real Dazen, the Prism, the current Prism, is actually in love with Karis. And this is where the wording is going to get confusing. So I'm going to switch them just for this right here.
That's fine.
So Dazen is actually in love with Karis.
Yeah.
And Gavin was the one who just like kind of fucked her and left her.
Yeah.
And so Dazen loves Karis, and she gets this note that says that he has a son and that it happened during the time of their betrothal, thinking that he's Gavin.
Yep.
And so it did happen that way, but it's not him. And so when he tells her, I swear it's not true, that's actually like it actually isn't, because he's not Gavin.
Yeah.
And so I that was something I picked up on my second read.
Yep.
That I didn't get the first time. And when I finally realized that, I was like, oh, that is cool.
Yep.
And so it's interesting to see how like just how the switch like really messed everything up. Just like when Dazen took over for Gavin, that switch, he ended up having to break off the betrothal to Karis.
Yeah.
And so she thinks that Gavin just decided, you know,
I don't want you anymore.
Yeah, I don't want you anymore, and decided to, you know, once he became the Prism, that he just didn't want her anymore and broke off the betrothal. But really, the person, it gets so confusing because the person that she thinks he is did not love her.
Yeah.
And the person that he actually is is like madly in love
Yeah.
with her. And so it's so interesting to watch this play out. And I'm really excited for the next book in regards to the romance, because Karis realizes that he is Dazen
Yeah.
at the end of the book.
Yep.
And she's mad at him, but I think it's gonna lead to he doesn't need to be fake with her anymore.
Yeah.
And he can tell her that he is like madly in love with her, and maybe they
For
can be
sure.
together.
Yep. Yep.
Because now he has nothing to hide. The whole reason he broke that off was because he knew,
Exactly.
he knew she would figure it out. So I'm really, really excited for that.
Yep. Me too.
So what did you think of the real Gavin who is in the prison, and kind of how he gets out? Like it's the craziest.
Yeah, it's pretty wild,
It's
man.
the craziest procedure. Oh my God.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm not really drawing a blank, but I'm trying to remember some parts where like Gavin, the real Gavin, is described, because I think in some scenarios, of course they made him out to be this devil, really bad dude, or Dazen was the bad guy who is actually Gavin.
Right.
But seeing him in the way that Gavin, the prism, kind of reacts to him and this different things, and he feeds him, and he has these thoughts about him every once in a while, that put the question in your head, like, wait, maybe there's something different. And then of course it goes to the actual Gavin, who is so confusing.
Yeah.
Gavin that's trapped in the jail, and he's in this blue prison. And he's been there for 16 years, right? He's been trapped in this prison for 16 years, and he's going through this like process because he wants to escape, so he wants to get out, and he's going through this process of like, because he's also prismatic, right? He can do all the colors just like his brother can. And this prison is built with I think they call it Hellstone.
Yep.
Was that it? Okay, so it's built with Hellstone, which basically like absorbs Luxon, or absorbs the power that they use to draft. So you can't really draft, or absorbs light. Maybe, is that better? Is that?
Yeah,
I think that's what it does.
What it does is it removes all of the stuff that he's drafted.
Okay.
So when he at the end there, when he drafted
oh yeah, it soaks it up like as they use it. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, and so then he's thinking about this crazy way to escape, and there's a lot of, he's like been scratching this hole and using the oils from his face, and like the acidic oils, and just rubbing it on
urine.
there. Urine, yep, anything acidic, just burning this little hole. And he keeps trying to draft green off of his piss, like every time he goes to pee. He's like, he drafts it, and there's this moment where he like thinks that he might have done it, and then it says like, well, it went away in 2 seconds, which is the same that it's done every other day. Right? Like that. So that's crazy. And then of course, eventually he does escape. He does finally get a little bit of green going, and then he gets the red from the light that the green made and gets out. And then come to find out, he gets into another prison. Was it blue? Was the next one, or green?
The next one was green.
Green. And then he realizes, he's like, no shit. There's going to be 7 prisons, 1 for every color.
Yep.
Like, and he just realizes like, dude, that would have been so freaking, that would have destroyed me.
Yeah.
Like all my hope would have been gone. But it seemed like it seemed like he took it, he laughed a little bit, and he's like, brother, I realize what you've done. So hopefully he doesn't, let it like stay, be all super down and not have hope.
The thing that I think is funny is, why does he think that when he gets to the final color that there will be any way out? Like, wouldn't Gavin, the current Gavin, just put this like miles underground, and there's just no way out? Like, I would imagine that's, he has made it so that there is no way for the real Gavin to get out.
Yep.
And so I am super, super excited to see what happens with that, because man, that is a really, really messed up turn of events.
Yeah.
And it took him, and like, I don't know why it took him 16 years to do what he did. Like,
for real. Yeah, I agree.
Like, he should have done that like way sooner.
Year one, he should, yeah.
But yeah, he eventually like drew like heat off himself, right? He
Yep.
drew the red
Yeah.
and
And then
blasted.
yeah, so he drew the red. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No
It's
good.
coming back to me now. He drew the red and like made like he got a little flame going, and then off of the flame, he got, he could see all these different colors, right, and different things.
Yes,
And
he was
and then
able to see the
that's
green
when
and yellow and
that's when he jumped on and got the rest of it going.
oh man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's pretty wild, huh?
that is wild, dude. Yeah, I'm super because obviously, he's got to get out at some point, and then he's going to be like a little bit of a foil to the current Gavin.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I'm super interested to see how he gets out. And I hope it gets answered why he's trapped in there
Yeah.
versus just and why he's trapped in there versus just being murdered.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other thing I don't know, he has this blue room, and then he goes into the hallway, and it's like lined with hellstone. Why did he not just step back into the blue room and shoot blue all down the hallway and cover the hellstone? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
that's a good question.
So that at least he would probably run out of red, but at least he would have blue in the next
When
room.
he got to the yeah, for sure. Yep.
So I'm like, come on, man. There's got to be
more to it than that.
Well, I'm just interested to find out how he's gonna find the next color in green and what color he needs to get out of green. Because I bet each room is gonna be a slightly different puzzle.
Yeah.
And so I'm super excited to see what happens with him.
For sure.
Okay, so you really liked Kip. He was a favorite. I thought it was funny how like I don't know, Kip is funny because I don't think I've ever seen like a main character who is overweight or fat or whatever.
Yeah,
like
he true.
Is like Kip is Kip describes himself many times as being very fat.
Yeah.
And so I'm like it's just a funny character choice. And I was also surprised. I was also surprised that he didn't have one of those chapters that every fantasy book has where, and then I trained all summer and I became like super ripped. And like Azoth going to Kylar, like he trained with Durzo and he became like super muscular.
Yep.
And I'm like, dang, I kind of hope that happens with Kip, because I mean, if he's gonna be like the fantasy hero of this book that like defeats the evil and whatever, I would think that he would need to be at least athletic, right? Like he would at least need to be in like good shape. And so I'm interested to see what his kind of character progression is, or if he's just going to remain a bigger guy and just be kind of like this like big brawler character, kind of like just like a big big fist character. Yeah, like Green Goblin. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. There was a little bit of foreshadowing and a little bit of payoff later on in the book. Early in the book, like really early in the book, Kip is referred to as wild in some way. There was some way he's referred to as being wild. And then Gavin has this talk with him where he's like, he's trying to get Kip to draft green, and he's telling Kip like, green is wild. Like you have to be wild to draft green. And then Kip is like much later on, Kip is like on the battlefield as like the green golem, just going nuts. and somebody else describes him as having a wild look about his eyes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's funny that kind of
Yep.
paid off there. Liv Danovis, definitely probably my number 2 favorite character, if not
Yeah.
my number 1. I just loved her, just like same thing as Gavin. She's got such a cool head on her shoulders. She's always kind of like not like snarky, like she doesn't always have something snarky to say, but she always has something very respectable to say, and
Yeah.
something very like level-headed, and I really really liked that. I liked her interactions with Kip, because Kip is like in love with her, and I
Yeah.
really
Head over
hope,
heels. Yeah.
yeah, I really hope they end up together. But Liv, you know, she's kind of got the same thing about her that that Kip does, but in a different way. Like Kip looks down on himself and he's like, I'm fat and all this stuff. And Liv, you know, when she's in that classroom, she's talking about the other girls,
Yeah.
and she's like, oh, like they're like these bombshells, like they're super gorgeous, and you know, they wear like these plunging necklines and these
Yep.
short skirts, and they're so beautiful. And so she kind of views herself as less than a little bit, but
Yeah.
anybody else looking at her is like, Liv is like beautiful.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was pretty interesting. And I loved her interactions with Kip, as far as like she's so like playful with him,
Yeah.
and like kind of like sarcastic, and she teases him and
Yep.
kind of plays pranks on him and stuff. And I thought that brought so much character to her, more than just being like this, you know, female love interest. She's very funny and kind of a prank, like she teases and pranks Kip multiple times.
Yeah.
And like when they're on the ladder going to her apartment or whatever, and she's like, go ahead, jump on it, and then she like makes a loud sound, making it sound like the bridge is breaking or whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I really liked how kind of goofy she was sometimes. But I thought it was interesting how she has this misunderstanding of why her father is working with the Prism, Gavin.
Yeah.
Because she obviously doesn't know that Gavin is Dazen.
Yeah.
And so she thinks that Gavin has kind of hired her to be this kind of be this card that he can throw down to get her father to work for him.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
When in reality, again, Gavin just wanted to hire Liv to be there for his son.
Yep.
So it's actually this very sweet thing that she thinks is this very conniving kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then Lord Omnichrome also comes to that same conclusion, not knowing that Gavin is Dazen, and has kind of used that to inscript her to his service. You know what I mean? Like he's like, yeah, your father is using you to get to General Danovis, but if you can convince General Danovis to come to our side, we'd be like really well off.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like it's almost one of those things where it's like you just want to tell the characters you're all on the same side. Like you just don't know it. Like you're literally all trying to achieve the same thing.
Yeah.
You just if you guys just knew that Gavin is Dazen, then it would fix so many things.
Yep.
And you know, that's I don't know if I would call that a trope, but that is like a thing that I really like in fantasy, when people don't have the full information and therefore ending up making more trouble for themselves.
Yeah.
Like every time Harry Dresden doesn't tell his friends about what's actually going on, and they all end up in deeper shit than if
Yep.
he had just told them what was
Yeah,
happening.
for sure.
And so I love that in fantasy books, and it works really, really, really well here.
Yes.
Liv is also being blackmailed to spy on the Prism, being used by, I don't know. Do you remember who the person is that's blackmailing her? Like who
I
they
know,
are?
I don't know her name, and she's just she's from some other satrapy,
Yeah. Okay.
and it's just trying to get information on the Prism.
Yeah. That whole time I was just like, God, Liv needs to just like, how the hell did Liv get involved with this person? Like,
Yeah.
what the hell, Liv? And so I'm really hoping that kind of works its way out.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, do you have anything about Liv? Did you feel any certain way about her character?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, I definitely liked her character, and I liked the progression, and I also liked I think the blackmail was a big part of that too, and seeing her battle between these two sides and what choices she's gonna make and how it'll play out. So I really enjoyed her character arc and just her character in general. But
Yeah,
you nailed it on what you said.
sure. What did you think of Karis White Oak?
Oh, I like Karis a lot. She's like, you
Yeah,
know, she's a badass. She's a black, what do they call them? The black guard, black guard,
Blackguard. Yeah,
black guard. So she's a member of
yeah,
the black guard, and uh, you know, she's like a weapon, right? But she's also like, you know, the lover of Gavin, which, or I guess, yeah, yeah. She's in love with Gavin. She thinks that Gavin's Gavin, but Gavin's Daisy. We already talked about this.
yeah.
Big thing back and forth, and she finds out at the end. Um, but I liked her character a lot, and I'm having a hard time pulling up. I had something in my head that was a part with her, and I can't remember, so I'll have to come back to it if I remember.
No worries. Um, something that's kind of interesting about her character is that she mentions that, the original Gavin has sex with her and gets her pregnant, and then she has the baby and gives it away.
Yeah.
And she even says it at one moment, she's like, hell, Kip could be my son.
Yeah,
And
I remember that.
I'm like, I wonder if Kip is her son.
For sure.
But the only thing is, and what it really comes down to is Kip's mother a liar?
Oh, yep.
Because she said that Gavin raped her,
Yeah.
and that's how she had Kip.
Yep.
And so I'm really interested to see. We've got to find out at some point who this baby was.
Yeah.
And so I'm really, really interested to see who that is.
Can you remember any bigger parts with her? Because maybe it might be the same one.
She gets taken as a prisoner in that army.
Oh, that's it.
Oh, really?
That's
Okay.
it. Yeah, that's what. Well, I was just, yeah, that's pretty much it. I was just gonna talk about how she's captured and the hair, whatever the fuck his name is, the king or whatever.
King
Uh,
Haradul.
Haradul is like crazy, like obsessed and fascinated, and she has to like bide her time, right? And like
Yeah.
slowly wait until she like finds an opening, and then of course Kip shows up and she finds her opening. It goes. That wasn't anything in particular that was very like stood out, but it was a cool scene.
Did you, I only noticed it on the reread, but did you notice where she's getting taken prisoner and they have to put these violet things
Yeah,
over her
yeah,
eyes?
for sure. And they like
Dude,
glue them to her with red Luxon and like stick them
oh
on so
my
she can't see any
God.
colors. Yeah, that was cool.
That was so scary. They were like, don't blink or your eyelashes will get
Yep,
ripped
get
off.
ripped off. And she's like, if you try and take them off, your whole eyelid will come off with them.
Yeah.
It'll rip your face apart.
I'm like, oh my God, that is horrific.
Yeah, it was wild.
But yeah, I really liked Kara. She was kind of the same as Liv. She was, she was fine with like teasing Kip and having fun, and she was kind of like, this like an older Liv, and
Yep.
she's very like sure of herself, but then when you kind of hear her inner thoughts, she's like not super sure of herself. And
Yep.
I just really liked her character, and I really, really wanted her to be with Gavin.
Yep.
And I think Kip even mentions at some point the two of them, and he's like, it's like having my mom and dad here, or something. Like he
Yeah.
talks
Yeah.
about her like being like the mom,
Yep.
and I'm like, that's super funny. I just want them to be one big happy family.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nothing
Fuck.
wrong with that, Spence. Nothing wrong with that.
All right. So we've talked about King Haradul and Lord
Yep.
Omnichrome. Um, did you have any like favorite quotes or anything from this list that you liked or anything?
Yes, absolutely. So, Gavin is speaking with the architect when they start to decide to build a wall and see what's going on. And basically he's talking to this architect and he asks him some questions, and this architect is like very shy, right? He's like, yes, yes, Lord Prism, absolutely very reverent
Yeah.
and stuff. And then, they're talking, and then Gavin's like, how much are we paying you? And the guy says, nothing. And Gavin's like, well, double it. And then just
Yeah.
walks off, right?
Yeah.
And it's just that's Gavin in a nutshell right there.
Yeah.
Like super like kind of like nonchalant about stuff, But yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of my favorites.
And then it takes what's his name, Iron Fist or
Yeah.
Iron Hands, to say he's joking, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
the architect is thinking like about paying me double or about paying me like
Yeah.
nothing. Like
Yeah.
is
For
he
sure.
like basically, am I getting paid? Like
Or am I not? Yeah, because nothing
yeah,
doubled is still nothing. That's the
right.
part that
Yeah.
cracked me up about it. Because I was like, this dude just got like, yeah, I don't
Exactly.
know. It was funny.
I also really liked this moment. It was kind of one of those quotes similar to that "We Men of Ash and Shadow" quote that I really liked.
Hmm.
And it's just kind of one of these quotes where it happens and you're like, wow, like that's something that I want to put on, like, I don't know, a t-shirt or a
For
sign or
sure. Get a
something.
tattoo of it,
Yeah, or tattoo of it. And it was there's fucking mosquitoes in here or something. It's driving me nuts. General Danavis is out on the balcony, and I think it's Liv that comes out, and it's while all this crazy shit is going on, like everything is just starting to ramp up, and it's about to get really crazy. And he's looking out at this either a sunrise or a sunset, and she comes up next to him and he says moments of beauty sustain us through hours of ugliness.
Yes. Yes.
And
That's super powerful.
I was just like, wow, that's so true. Because we'll be in periods of our life, like long periods of our life, where things are going to shit and things are really, really bad. But it's the day here and there within that of like something good happening that makes us push on just a little bit longer.
Yep.
And that one day of goodness in the midst of all this other stuff gets us to the next day of goodness.
Yes, absolutely.
It kind of gets us from point to point. And so I thought that was such a beautiful quote. I was like, wow, that is really, really good. Another one that I thought was kind of funny was one of the war leaders points his gun at a man on the battlefield with a blue bag. He's pointing his gun at him, and the guy with the bags shouts, "I'm a messenger." And it's like literally like,
don't shoot the messenger.
Yeah.
Yes. That's so awesome.
Exactly. I'm like, that was a really like crafty way to do that.
Yep. Absolutely.
Here's other
one.
of these?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm not sure who said this. Maybe you might know, or maybe it was. Yeah, I don't know. I'll probably butcher that if I try. But it says, "Better for the innocent to live than for the guilty to die." And I
Mhm.
I can't remember who said that. And like to me, that like sounds, sounds like kind of bad. Or no, no,
It
other way around. Sorry. No, no, yeah, we're good. It sounds good. Sounds good.
yeah.
I was confusing
So
guilty and innocent in my head. I was like, wait.
right. Yeah, I think if I Kip is the one who says it in his inner monologue, but I think it's something that Gavin told him or maybe Karis told him. And this is a very interesting quote because when I initially heard it, just on like in the immediate seconds after hearing it, I was
Yeah.
like, well, that's the same thing.
Yeah.
But what he's getting at, and Brent Weeks does such a good job of painting an example with it, is when Kip is on the battlefield and he has the choice to save Karis or kill King Haradul.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of this question of, it's better for you to save someone who is innocent, who is about to die, than kill a man who is guilty that needs to die.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
And
great way of saying that.
man, I that's another one of those just like really, really good quotes that kind of make you think about like just how many ways that can be applied. Especially like Kip is so focused on killing this King Haradul
Yep.
because he believes his mom was the one who wanted him to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he's there on the battlefield and he has this opportunity to kill this man, but is is getting justice or vengeance on killing this bad person more important than saving someone who is innocent? And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
it's a great quote.
Yes.
um i love I love this thing that Kip says after I forget what happened before it, but it was some awkward encounter with Liv, and he says, always something to say, never the right thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is how I feel
Yeah. Yep.
99% of the time.
Yep.
I'm like, I'm just like Kip. I have like this loud mouth. I just say shit and it always comes out like never how I intend it to come
Yep.
out.
Yep.
And so I just loved how how boiled down to the raw essence this is.
Yep.
Always something to say, never the right thing.
That's right.
This is great. Um, and then they were talking about the drafting and the magic in this book, but it really does apply to many things in the real world. And Gavin says, will covers a multitude of flaws just as love covers a multitude of sins.
Yeah. That's
and
good.
and so it's basically what it's saying, just as love covers a multitude of sins, just as love allows you to forgive someone and to
Yep.
you know embrace them, will if you are not good at something but you are willing to try very, very hard
Yeah.
and will yourself to do it, you will cover a lot of your flaws with effort.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so I really like that quote as well. There was a lot of I didn't write down all of them, but there was a lot of good quotes in this book.
Yes.
All right, let's start to wrap this up. What were your favorite moments in this book or your most emotional moments?
Yep. So I think that, and this is like, I don't know the exact moment that this happened, but it was finding out about the switch. Gavin
Yes.
is not Gavin. So that was like not emotional in a bad way, but it was very like it was a potent feeling of like no fucking way.
Yeah.
Like that's the way that I thought, and so that was pretty emotional. And another one is the threshing too. The threshing
Mhm.
as a whole, and then also Kip Kip's journey through it. And so it's kind of like this, like, basically it's kind of a secret thing, and you're set up to fail. Everybody is, right? And so
Right.
everybody's set up to actually fail, and you have to go endure these. I don't know what they're made. I think they're Luxin, but there's some kind of like, it's basically a magic at work, and you got all these like rats and spiders and stuff crawling over you, biting you, and this
Yeah.
and that, and you have to hold on to this rope or try not to wring this rope. And so of course, Kip's down there, and that's when he lets go. He's like, he has this moment in his head. He's like, I'm gonna make my father proud, right? He lets go of
Right.
it. And then of course that girl gives him back the rope, which he wasn't supposed to do, yada yada. And then he
Yeah.
pulls it after like 4 minutes, 30 seconds. He's like, I'm done. I cannot do anymore. This is terrifying. I'm done. Rings it. He goes up and he's just mortified. He's like, I've failed. I
Yeah.
have failed my dad. It's super, super sad. And then he gets up there and fucking everybody's just like, oh, you 4 minutes? Dude, what? It's great. You did so much better than I did. And Kip's like,
Yeah.
what? And he's like, yeah, no, I got like 30 seconds. That's all I could do. And it's just like this moment of like, holy crap, dude. I was
Yeah.
not expecting it, but I'm so glad that it happened like that.
Yeah. I felt the same way because when I was first listening to that, I was thinking like when he actually like wrung the rope, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, he's not going to be a part of the Chromaria. And
Yeah, that's what I thought
Gavin,
too.
I'm like, Gavin is going to have to find something else for him to do or some other way to get him trained. And so I was like, shit, what's he going to
Yeah,
do?
yeah.
And then when he gets to the top, it is like, oh,
You're
dude,
like, all right, that worked out. That worked out okay.
yeah, yeah. And it's also funny to see how upset Gavin was with that girl because I think he had said that her family was in support of Dazen during the war, and
Yeah,
she thinks he is Dazen, but she thinks he's Gavin.
yeah,
And so she might have been trying to throw the test for Kip, but he might have passed it if he hadn't had the rope.
yeah,
So I loved when Kip drafts for the first time and makes that rubber ball and he like shoots it at the guy that Gavin is talking to. I think he was like, what was he, like a mayor or a governor or something? He was someone like really important and he like shoots the rubber ball at him.
yep.
I love that.
It was definitely the mayor.
Okay,
Yep.
cool. And then I I also loved the very beginning of the book where Kip is talking to this color white and the guy is teasing him saying, have you ever felt like you were destined for greatness? Like there are things that lie beyond this small town village that you've been raised in. And that he's like, there's a prophecy written
Yeah,
about you. Like I'm here because I'm here for you.
yep.
And Kip basically just calls him out on his bullshit, and he's like, "That's not very funny. Like,
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
like
Like,
that's
why are you
not
doing
super
that?
entertaining." Yeah.
Yeah,
And what I thought was really funny about this is poking fun at the very typical farm boy to hero trope.
yeah,
Kind of this idea, like think Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. He's kind of like this farm boy, nobody, and he ends up becoming like the chosen one. And it's
yep.
like a very popular thing in fantasy, right? And so I love that Brent Weeks, when this old color white is talking to Kip, you're like, oh my God, like is Kip really about to be this chosen one? And that's why this guy came out to the farm to like try to get him to, do whatever.
Yep.
And then Brent Weeks is like, just kidding. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought that was super funny. A little bit of, almost a little bit of fourth wall breaking a little
Yep.
bit. Gavin building the wall.
Yes.
Dude.
Yeah, that's wild.
Dude, this was super cool. And just talking about like I just picture like Gavin, because it's talking about like how he's using more magic than he's ever used.
Yeah,
And
for
so
sure.
I imagine him just kind of like floating and like pouring magic from either
Yeah,
hand and
absolutely.
just
Like
pouring it into
constantly.
this wall. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, that is such a cool image. And then of course, like the artist comes in and he makes all these like crazy movable
Yep.
Luxon
Yep.
on the wall that is super scary and stuff.
Which is super cool.
And
I love that part.
yeah. And then Gavin freeing him,
Yeah.
the artist, that was one of the parts in this book that really made me tear up.
Yeah.
Where this artist is a nobody. He doesn't
Yeah.
have a last name because he's not from an area where they have last names. Only like
Yep.
really important people have last names.
Yep.
And so Gavin basically tells this guy before he has to kill him, he tells him like, you are very important and I am very proud of you.
Yeah.
And you have accomplished something here. Like this wall
Will never
that
be
you
forgotten, I think
will,
is
yeah, will
yeah.
never be forgotten. It'll protect people for thousands of years,
Yep.
and you did that. And so I love just like this moment where he's like, just being very, very gentle and nice with him.
Yeah.
And then he gives him a last name before he
Yep.
before he
Yes,
frees him.
and the last name is the name of the wall, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And the artist is just like crying.
Yes. Yes.
And it was just like this very, very special moment. And it really reminded me of kind of the end of the Scythe books where Faraday's doing his final gleaning.
Yep. Yep.
And he's telling the guy, you should be proud of your accomplishments
Yes. Yes. Very,
and all
very
this
similar.
stuff.
I would agree.
Yeah. And so I really like that. It definitely made me tear up quite a bit.
Yeah.
And of course, another part that made me tear up was Gavin freeing his mom.
Oh yeah, of course. Yes.
Oh my
that was tough.
God. That was a tough part to read. And she's telling him about all these things that she has done during his reign,
Yeah.
and how she has killed people who found out that he was Dazen.
Yep.
And I was just like, oh my God, like this is
Yes.
so
Yep.
this is
I agree.
so sad.
And she made it almost easier because she was so ready. She knew that, and I think that makes it easier when she was so decisive, I guess. I'm not sure what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say,
No,
but
I agree.
yeah.
I agree. And it did make it easier because she was like, I've been wanting to do this for years.
Yeah.
I've put it off because your father didn't want me to, but I'm ready to do it now.
Yep.
And it was just this very sweet moment. He tells her that he loves her right before
Yes.
he frees
Yes.
her. And yeah, it was very, very sad. And of course it's even more sad because we kind of get the hint not too long after that breaking your halo isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
And so it makes it doubly sad.
For
and
sure.
then he doesn't free the rest of them because they decide to fight for him in
Yeah.
the army.
Do their own kind of like almost Suicide Squad thing.
Yeah, exactly. And but the one lady comes in and she basically told him like, I'm not going to tell anybody, but I know that you are Dazen.
Yeah.
And so that was a really interesting interaction.
Yep.
And then all those people, I think it's Karis. Yeah, I think it's Karis when the battle is lost and she's like fleeing the city. She sees all these super famous drafters. Like she's listing all these names. She's like, oh my God, all these war heroes that I thought were dead are like here and they're fighting, and it's blowing my mind. I love that part.
Yep.
What did you think about how the battle ended up? It kind of subverted a lot of fantasy tropes. Do you think?
Explain that.
So, like, usually in some way at the end of a fantasy book, the good guys will win,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yep. And
And
yes, I
yeah,
would
go
agree.
ahead.
No. You got it. But I was just gonna say yes. The they didn't win.
They didn't win, and
Yeah.
they had to flee the city, and Gavin had to give up this city that he
Yes.
put so much work into.
And the
Um,
wall, and he's like, I just gave our enemies like an indomitable wall, right?
yeah,
Just super
e-
bummed out.
exactly. He even said if he had had one more hour, that wall would
Yes.
have been perfect because he would have
Yeah.
finished the gate.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I think that was great. I love it when the good guys don't always win.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's
Because
true. Yeah, for sure.
it's more real.
Yep. Exactly. It goes against what not the norm, but the expectation of like reading that, and then in
Yeah,
that it's better, right? It's
yeah,
more enjoyable.
exactly. It sets itself apart. Um, Karis realizes that Gavin is Dazen,
Yeah,
and
that's a big moment.
like I mentioned earlier, I think, oh my God, I really want to read. That's like a main reason why I want to read the second book is just to find out what the fallout from that is.
Yep.
Because, Karis, I don't know if she loved Dazen, but they were together for a while before she got betrothed to Gavin.
Yeah.
So she was with Dazen for a while. And so I'm interested to see if he tells her, like, no, I'm actually like, I've been in love with you forever.
Yeah,
I'm really, really hoping they get together.
for sure.
Um, this is the part that absolutely had me in tears, not just like tearing up a little bit. Like I had tears rolling down my face. Gavin officially calling Kip son.
Yeah.
Um, and like I said earlier, Gavin treats Kip extremely well for being a bastard throughout the entire book.
Yep.
And I really like that, but there's still when Gavin officially claims Kip as a son and says, "No, you earned the name
Yeah.
Guile today."
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, there's oh my God, there's this weight to it that's just
Yes.
like I freaking love this. Like I love that and he says like we're done with that nephew business because you know, he's been calling him his nephew this entire
Yep.
time.
And he wants to show people like, no, this is my son.
Which is funny because there's actually when I was listening to the Legendarium podcast, they were talking about how when the popes would have an illegitimate son, they would tell everybody that it was their nephew so that they
Oh,
wouldn't get removed from their position as
yeah.
pope.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's kind of an interesting thing. Gavin is this like religious figure. Like he
Yeah.
is like this religious like head of the Chromaria. And
Yep.
also we haven't really mentioned this a lot, but there's also this god called Hrothgar or something. What is the
No,
name?
I feel like I want to say like it starts with an E, something.
I can't remember, but there's some
Yeah.
god that they all believe in. He Gavin is like the I guess second in command to that god. He's like the messiah figure kind of thing
Yep.
when it comes to that church. And so it's interesting that Brent Weeks did this whole nephew thing and that's actually what popes of
Yeah.
the Catholic
Oh, for
Church would
sure.
do.
Yep.
There's so many connections there. But yeah, when he called him his son, I completely lost it. Kip realizes there is a note in the box and it says to kill Gavin.
Yeah. That's pretty wild.
So this is another interesting piece of fallout of Dazen taking over for Gavin. It's another one of those just kind of things that's going to come with being Gavin is like Kip's mom probably was raped by the original Gavin, but
Yeah.
now Kip thinks that Dazen is Gavin.
Yeah.
And he's going to try to kill his dad.
Yep.
And oh my God, it's going to lead to so much
Yeah,
shit.
the entire process of that is going to be very intriguing.
Yeah, I really hope he just doesn't do it because
Yeah.
first of all, can we talk about Kip's mom for a second? Like this bitch, like
Yep.
like why would you give a fuck what she wants you to do?
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I
She's
mean?
nothing but nasty to him. Call it your disgrace. I never wanted you. Go
Oh
die.
my
All sorts of
God.
crap.
Another part that made me tear up just a little bit was the moment where Kip is talking about how he was left home alone for several days
Yeah.
and he was like very young
Yeah.
and all these rats and stuff were like biting him
Yeah.
and he was like trapped. I think he was trapped in a closet or
Yeah.
something.
Yep. That's
And
exactly it.
all these rats are like biting at him and he can't get them off of him and his whole body is just covered in them and they're like peeing on him and all this stuff. And his mom gets home after being gone for like a week and like begrudgingly gets the rats off of him and again begrudgingly cleans his wounds with the last bit of alcohol that she has.
Yeah.
And I can just picture her being like, oh my God, you're using up my last bit of alcohol to
Yep.
clean your wounds. Like this sucks. And
Yep.
yeah. And so I hate her. Like,
Yeah.
why would you do anything she wants you to do?
No, for
I
sure. I
really,
wanna.
really, go
No,
ahead.
you're good. I was just gonna say I want to find more out about her, and I'm sure we will.
Yeah. I, I'm really interested to see if Kip actually carries out trying to kill Gavin.
Yeah.
So did you pick up on why Gavin might not be able to draft blue at the end of the book?
Well, I thought I did it. He was stabbed with that knife, you know,
Yes. Okay.
and that's what that's why that like that white Luxon or whatever the dagger is affected him and like blocked a certain I don't know something. But yeah, no, I'm
Yeah.
with you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I did not catch that at all the first time.
Oh yeah,
And even the second time, I only realized it because I listened to the Legendarium
yeah.
podcast,
And they said something.
and they said something about how all the diamonds on the blade are clear except for the blue one.
Yeah,
And so it's like, did that steal Gavin's ability to
for
draft
sure.
blue?
Yep.
And now Gavin thinks that his time as Prism is
Death is
coming to an
starting.
end.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh my God,
yeah.
that's
That is
so
wild. That
good.
is
That's
wild.
so good. Yeah, I'm interested to find out more about the white dagger and to kind of see what's going on with all that. And where it came from and what it's actually used for, because
Yeah, yeah.
obviously it can take someone's drafting ability away.
Which is a big deal. And then how did the mom get it? Why did the mom have the dagger?
How the hell did the mom get it? Why
Yep.
did she hang on to it for so long?
Yeah.
Like there's got to be more to her character that tells us how this all came to be.
Yep.
And not only that, but how can the dagger be used? Once it harnesses all the colors, can it be used to draft?
For sure.
So that'll be interesting.
Yep. Very interesting.
Yeah, so like I guess the question would be like, who is Kip's mom really? Like, she's got to be something more than she seems.
Yeah.
Another note I have here is what is a black prism?
Oh, that's a good question.
Right?
That's a really good question because yeah, all right, you just caught me by surprise with that one.
Right?
That's cool.
I'm kind of like what is the title of the book referring to?
Yeah,
And is black possibly a draftable color?
for sure.
You
Well, because
know?
like when I think about of a black, prism is something that reflects all light spectrums, right? It does all the light,
Right.
and so
Which
black
is what
prism would swallow all that
right.
light, right? So yeah, so there's some
Yeah.
weird stuff going on about it. I agree.
Oh, interesting. I didn't think about that. Yeah, because black is
Has a
yeah,
potential, it can kind of swallow other colors and drown them out. So I
yeah,
maybe
because black. No, I think you're very much on the right track. Because I think isn't isn't white somehow all the colors and black is like
yeah,
the absence of color?
yes,
And
exactly.
so if I bet it just like
It could, yeah, you never,
swallows color. Oh,
yeah,
dude,
yeah,
that's super cool.
yeah.
All right. So what are our final thoughts on this book, having just talked through it all and reading it more or less twice? Like, where where do we think that this series is going to rank eventually? Like, do we think like these books are going to get really, really good, or do we see like what are we hoping for the future?
Yep, I got you. So this series, I see a massive amount of potential.
Yeah,
But the way that they set it up, um, all the connections and just all the parts that move together in this book, but you realize that like there can be a lot done with those parts. Like you can make
right.
a lot more story and different twists and whatnot, and the whole Gavin, um, Dave, what's his Day something? What's his
Dazen.
Dazen? Yeah,
Yeah.
that thing's crazy. For me overall, I really did enjoy the book. I wouldn't, I probably wouldn't put it into my top like 5. I don't
Yeah.
think. Um, Dresden Files fills that up. But
Yeah.
but yeah, so I really liked it. I thought the magic system was a really cool idea, and it worked really well. Once you figured it out and got to the root of how it works, you're like, dude, that's fucking cool. Like, what a cool
Yeah.
way to harness magic and stuff. And yeah, if I was to just rank this book, right, I'm on my bias,
Right.
my rank, I would give it a
Yeah.
7 out of 10.
Oh yeah, that's very good.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I would definitely agree with that very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I think that's probably a good rank for it. And I'm really, really hopeful and excited for the rest of the series because I know a lot of people who were really hardcore Night Angel fans
Yeah.
say that this is the better series.
Yeah.
And right now I don't think so because
Yep.
I really like Night Angel, but
We haven't read the rest.
if
Yeah.
if people who are big fans of Night Angel are saying that, then maybe the series just gets crazy and
For
it gets
sure.
really, really
Yep.
good.
See, like I said, I
Um,
could see that happening easily. Like I
yeah,
have a strong feeling that that is what's going to happen. It's going to get wild.
right, right. Yeah, so super excited to see where it goes. Super excited to find out more of the kind of intricacies of what's going on in this
Yep.
world and uncover some of the conspiracies. Um, the only thing that I wouldn't like, and I'm sure it's going to happen at some point, but I really wouldn't like it if Gavin, the new Gavin, was to die anytime soon
Yeah.
and just leave us with Kip. Because I liked Kip, but I I didn't like him as like a main character.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the forefront. I really liked Gavin as the main character. So
For
I
sure.
really
Yeah.
hope he doesn't die and then the story gets kind of taken over by
Yep.
Kip.
Gotcha.
Um,
I could agree with that.
yeah. All right. So we'll be looking forward to the next book. We'll figure out in our schedule when we would like to tackle that. But everyone, thank you so much for tuning in this week for the Lightbringer Saga Book 1. We will be back next week continuing with the Dresden Files read-along, and we will be discussing Blood Rights, so prepare for that if you haven't read it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and follow us on Twitter at Files Fantasy to keep up with all of our ramblings over there. If you would like to suggest a book for us to cover on the show, go ahead and leave a comment below or reach out on Twitter to let us know what you think we should read and discuss next. Until next time, remember to imprison your family members and switch lives with them, because that works out really well.
Yeah. She's in love with Gavin. She thinks that Gavin's Gavin, but Gavin stays. We already talked about this.